striking two systems out in the tropics this morning, a tropical storm and a potential tropical cyclone.
Don't want to hear that.
No.
But this morning, not too much going on weather-wise, which means not too much going on traffic-wise. We don't have any serious accidents out there right now, but drive times are about to pick up.
An outrage this morning after a college student who was held prisoner in North Korea for 17 months dies. The 22-year-old was in a coma when he was brought back to America just last week.
And a Tampa strip club owner is challenging Florida's medical marijuana laws. Joe Redner has stage 4 lung cancer and wants to grow his own marijuana because he says he doesn't know what's in the plants he's buying from licensed growers.
Well, it is an election that could go down in history today. Just outside Atlanta in Georgia, in one district, more than $50 million has been spent on a single House seat.
And Senate Republicans are working on their version of the Affordable Care Act. So Democrats, they don't have the votes to stop this version from happening. So they are planning speeches and theatrics to draw attention to the way it's being created.
And you could see some big changes at Tampa's Channelside Bay Plaza this morning. Port Tampa Bay officials will decide if part of the plaza will be torn down to make way for renovations.
Hey, good morning to you, especially those of you watching on Facebook this morning. Weather, a big story as we get you started on this Tuesday morning. Two tropical systems out there. We have a developing tropical cyclone and a tropical storm in the tropics this morning. Let's talk about our weather here in the Bay Area, where we're on the eastern fringe of this potential tropical cyclone. I'll talk more about that in just a few minutes. It will eventually become a tropical storm, we think, becoming Tropical Storm Cindy. In the meantime, just a few sprinkles possible this morning, most of the rain off the coast. So I'm not overly concerned with rain for that morning commute. A little bit more of a chance of some showers and thunderstorms later this afternoon. Temperatures warming up to near 90 later today with a building chance for those afternoon showers and thunderstorms. But we will be watching the tropics very closely, and you can be tracking the tropics as well. On the 10 News app, you can track the tropics, you can look at live radar, and get all the weather and news updates right at your fingertips. Hillary, good morning.
Hey, good morning, Grant. Our bridges are looking good, and I'm going to thank you because we don't have any serious weather this morning. It's really helping the roads out. Our drive times are normal. We haven't picked up just yet. So the Gandy Bridge is taking you just 5 minutes to cross. The Howard Franklin is still at 6 minutes. Give it another 30 minutes, and I'd say that'll get up to about 8 or 9 minutes as we get into peak rush hour. But the Courtney Campbell Causeway is still at 7 minutes for you if you're heading to the Tampa International Airport, no delays. And the Sunshine Skyway Bridge at a solid 17 minutes from 75 to Pinellas Point Drive. Jackie.
Well, Hillary, pointing fingers and demanding answers from the North Korean government. That is how U.S. lawmakers are reacting to Otto Warmbier's death. He's the American college student who was sentenced to 15 years of hard labor in North Korea for stealing a propaganda poster. He came back to America just last week after spending 15 months in a coma. And his father says he didn't believe North Korea's story about botulism and a sleeping pill. Also, Otto had no signs of any physical trauma. President Trump did speak about Warmbier's death and criticized North Korea.
At least we got him home to be with his parents, where they were so happy to see him, even though he was in very tough condition, but he just passed away a little while ago. It's a brutal regime.
16 U.S. citizens have been detained there over the last 10 years. Some report being tortured in tiny cells, but others say they've been kept in a guest house and actually treated well. And experts say Westerners are often well cared for because they're seen as bargaining chips and used that way. But that might not have been the case with Warmbier. And his death upset so many people around the country. I know it did for you when you got that alert on your phone. So we did a Facebook Live last night, our evening anchor, Katie McCall, and this got more than 300 comments. A lot of mixed reaction, though, Courtney.
You're right, Jackie. Huge reaction over this. And she asked people the question, what do you think the U.S. needs to do next? Because we got to remember there are 3 people that are detained in North Korea from the U.S. right now. Again, Margaret said they need to get those other individuals out of prison and says North Koreans need to be held accountable for their actions. Anthony said that North Korea released him as a tactical move. If he did die in prison there, it would have been real bad for them. Michael said Otto should never have been there in the first place, let alone steal a political banner. North Korea, they have no respect for their own lives. Why would anyone think an American would be any different? Now, unfortunately, this will probably be the only thing the country will remember him by, but I wanted to show you guys a little bit more of his life before all of this happened. He was a National Scholarship semifinalist in high school, as you can see here with his team. He was homecoming king in these two pictures, and a normal guy, a senior soccer player back in high school. But let's go back quickly to the other three that are still detained in North Korea. One is there for espionage. The other two are there because of a hostile act against the country, Rob.
A lot of people have been really critical of the situation, Courtney, asking why an American or Americans would want to travel to someplace like North Korea in the first place. Well, despite the U.S. government strongly urging people not to visit, between 800 and 900 Americans go there each and every year. Now, you're allowed to visit museums and historical sites, but get this, the rules are so strict you have to use a North Korean cell phone provider right when you cross the border so the government can listen in on all your calls. We also looked at some of the behaviors that are treated as crimes there. So here they are: taking unauthorized photos, any unauthorized interaction with locals, which there's some gray area there, taking part in unsanctioned political activities, and shopping at stores that are designated for locals only. That can get you arrested, and that's just to name a few. Now, Courtney, the travel company that actually took Warren Beer's group to North Korea is based out of China. Not surprisingly, that group not taking Americans to North Korea right now.
Right, yeah, it's called Young Pioneer Tours, and they have offered their sympathies for this family. But listen to this, it's kind of interesting. For years, they have marketed themselves as providing, quote, budget travel to destinations your mother would rather you stayed away from. Kind of interesting.
Yeah, it's an odd slogan. I don't know if that would make me sign up with them.
It wouldn't for me. It
Right,
wouldn't for me.
right.
So.
6:06 right now, and some people in St. Pete, they are waking up today not feeling good about where the city appears to be heading. That's because the mayor unveiled his proposed budget late yesterday, and the poor and working class say they feel left out of it. So according to our partners at the Tampa Bay Times, more than 24 people argued not enough money is going towards affordable housing, homelessness, safer streets, and a permanent fix to the city's sewage woes. In fact, the mayor's budget was conservative. No property tax cuts and no new initiatives. But remember, this is an election year, so that might be why the mayor is being a bit more cautious. He's going to present his final budget next month. Okay, this is something we know a lot of you are considering right now, cutting the cord. But is it right for you? 10 News reporter Phil Buck has some ways that you can cut cable costs and why ditching cable altogether might not be right for everybody.
I didn't have to look far to find someone who's already cut the cord. Tom O'Brien works right here in the same building. He got rid of cable about a year ago.
I've saved a lot more money, which was nice. That was my overall goal.
What was the last straw that got you to actually say, you know what, I'm cutting a cord?
When I wanted to change my packaging, I wanted to go with less channels, and there was the rate didn't change at all. I was still paying like $120.
Sound familiar? Well, it should.
People are cutting the cord more frequently than ever, and everyone's kind of looking for ways to save, ways to cut back, and really questioning whether cable is still relevant in their lives and can they do without it, and if they can't, how can they save on it?
Okay, so what should you consider when looking at whether or not cord cutting is right for you?
So it's really important to do the math and figure out what that's going to cost you altogether when you add in everything that you want, even when you're doing this a la carte, and find out what your savings is going to be. You may come to find that actually cutting the cord is not the best option for you.
In other words, all those streaming services like Netflix, Hulu, Amazon Prime, HBO Go, they all add up. And when you factor in what you're paying for internet service on top of that, you may get more bang for your buck by bundling services with your cable provider. Right. For O'Brien, once he looked at what he was watching and crunched the numbers, it turned out to be the right move. Do you ever miss it?
No. I don't even notice it.
He notices it in the bank account, though, that $120, $150, right, Bill?
True.
So if somebody wants to cut down on their bill and they're not ready to cut that cord completely, what can they do, Phil?
A couple of things, really. Here's what you should really start to look at. Number one, cut down on some of the extras. Talking about like extra receivers in the house, maybe in the bedroom or another third room. extra channels you might not be watching as much, and then DVR services. And because almost everything is available on demand these days, that DVR has really, for a lot of people, kind of become irrelevant. And beyond that, call your provider. And I know this can be a pain. It can take time going through customer service and all that,
Yes.
but it can be worth it. One, take a look at the fees you're paying. Some of those can be waived if you just ask. And then also ask to talk to a manager and try to negotiate a better rate, because they know lots of people are cutting the cord.
Oh, yes.
They are under a tremendous amount of pressure to keep you on as a paying customer. So they'll do what they got to do to keep you on.
Okay, so we have great shows coming up, Game of Thrones, things like that. So that is probably incentive to keep your cable HBO.
A lot of people are hesitant to drop it because of, say, Game of Thrones, but you can get deals associated with those shows. So if you call right around the launch of the season, it's coming up in about 4 weeks, you might be able to get a 3-month free trial, or you can also drop it right after that show ends.
So we're ending our Facebook Live broadcast right now, but you're going to want to turn to Brightside, especially if you're into traveling, because you've heard of flights being canceled over snow. Today, it's because of record heat. Good morning to you as you wake up today. Here's what you need to know. A major warning from Russia's defense ministry. Any U.S.-led coalition plane flying in certain areas in Syria would be treated as potential targets.
Business at Mar-a-Lago is booming. Despite all the controversy surrounding the president since running for president, Trump's Palm Beach property has made more than $37 million, up $7.4 million from a year ago.
A lot of money. Orlando is already famous for its theme parks, we know this, but now they're on the map as one of the best places for video gamers. Wallet Hub says the city has the most video game stores and arcades per capita, giving it the top rank in the nation.
Developing this morning for you, 200 million registered voters, all at risk for being hacked. It is being called the largest leak of voter information in history. A contractor hired by the Republican National Committee left databases with information available for the public to download. And this leak proves that any party can have cybersecurity problems. And before he became president, Donald Trump tweeted about the DNC being hacked. He wrote, "Gross negligence by the Democratic National Committee allowed hacking to take place." The Republican National Committee had a strong defense. Well, that was then, and this is now. And I recently checked, the president has not tweeted about this latest leak. Well, dangerous and potentially deadly heat across the Southwest today, Grant. Really scary here. Roads are buckling in California, and it's so hot in Phoenix that dozens of flights are being canceled out of the Phoenix Sky Harbor Airport. So how hot does it have to get for that to happen, Grant?
Pretty hot. You know, you think about it, so hot that planes can't fly. I mean, it gets so hot out there. 120 degrees forecast temperature for this afternoon. And so, I mean, look at these forecast numbers. Las Vegas, 116, Phoenix, 119, but, you know, 120 at that point, right? Here's why you just can't fly when you have temperatures that hot. Colder air is more dense. When you get hot air, it's less dense. There's less molecules around for the planes to fly. So if you have less dense air, the jet engines or even propellers, they have a harder time creating that thrust to be able to get the airplane down the runway. And you combine that with the fact that because there's less air to generate the lift, these airplanes have a harder time lifting off of the ground. So if you put those conditions together, when you have hot conditions, you need a longer runway to get enough speed to get that airplane off of the runway. And if it gets so hot, they just have to cancel the flights because they don't have enough runway to be able to lift the airplane off the ground, which is what you want to do when you fly. You want to get that plane off the ground. Back home, here's what we're tracking, a couple of tropical systems. Overall, Hillary, I mean, we're tracking this tropical system. You know it. I mean, when we get these systems in the Gulf, it could have a huge impact on travel, but fortunately this morning, no impact for us.
It has a big impact on travel, you're right, and especially for people who are trying to book flights in those areas, or maybe their plane, you know, they know it's going to go through that storm.
Yeah.
It'd be frustrating.
You got to watch the whole Gulf when you have one of these systems moving through.
Yeah, good to know. Thanks, Grant. This morning, it's helping that we don't have much rain out there at all, no high winds, no fog, because our roads are relatively quiet. Couple of new accidents, though, and if you're thinking about taking public transportation to get around Tampa Bay, you could see some changes because Hart is planning to cut the bus system's 41 routes to 34 in hopes to save some money. But it might affect you a lot, because this is going to happen in 2018. You have a couple of years, but here's what you can expect. There will only be one route along US 41 in southern Hillsborough County. So that's the Sun City Center area, Apollo Beach, that area. There will also be cuts on low ridership routes in East Tampa, Carrollwood, and West Chase. On more popular routes, transit officials say you can expect more frequent service, so that's good for you. But HART officials hope the changes will improve service for at least 80% of riders. We'll keep an eye on it for you.
Well, it is only June, but UPS is already thinking about holiday shipping, and it is going to cost you more money. I know that stinks, but the company says additional charges are going to start the week of November 19th and cost about 27 cents per package for ground delivery early in the season. But as it gets closer to Christmas, they're going to charge about 97 cents for 2- and 3-day services. Well, a person from Trump's own party is trash-talking him on his way out the door. Good morning to you, 6:25. So I tweeted out this earlier, Rob. Would you talk smack about your boss before leaving that company?
Probably not.
Probably not. A lot of people on Twitter said no. But this is something that one Republican is actually doing.
Yeah, Congressman Jason Chaffetz has less than 2 weeks before he leaves office, and here's what he had to say about President Trump and Attorney General Jeff Sessions. Quote, "The reality is, sadly, I don't see much difference between the Trump administration and the Obama administrations." And about Sessions, quote, "I find him to be worse than what I saw with Loretta Lynch in terms of releasing documents and making things available." Chaffetz withdrew his support of President Trump just weeks before the 2016 election. His last day in office is June 30th. And he's not the only one. A Hawaiian lawmaker who was forced out of her leadership post in the Republican Party was criticizing the president's, and she's now getting a second chance. The Democratic Party voted to accept former House Minority Leader Beth Fukumoto. There are just 5 Republicans in Hawaii's House and none in the Senate. And how do your views match up with others in this poll on President Trump's travel ban? The AP says 57% of people are siding with the courts in blocking that ban, but 39% say that the judges are actually interfering with the president's plan, Jackie.
Well, Rob, a Tampa business owner is taking his concern over cannabis to the courtroom.
Good morning. Tracking 2 tropical systems this morning, a Tropical Storm Brett, and a developing tropical system in the central Gulf of Mexico.
A new tension between North Korea and the U.S. after an American student held prisoner for more than a year dies. He had just returned to the U.S. in a coma, and Secretary of State Rex Tillerson says North Korea will be held accountable for this.
Dozens of dogs are being taken care of this morning after being rescued from a Citrus County home. Now, investigators say it is one of the most horrific cases that they have seen. The owners were charged with animal cruelty.
Well, St. Pete's mayor is getting some backlash after laying out next year's proposed budgets. Critics say that it doesn't cover people who are of lower income and things like city streets.
Also, dangerous temperatures are expected today in Phoenix, a heat wave bringing temperatures that could be near 120 degrees.
The heat, it's the humidity, right? Oh, yeah. Right? No, I mean 120 degrees, that's for real. So is this, 2 tropical systems that we're tracking this morning. A potential tropical cyclone. We talked about that about 10 minutes ago. I actually just posted what that means on my Facebook and Twitter page. Also, Tropical Storm Brett now spinning just off the northern coast of South America. The developing tropical system in the Gulf of Mexico will stay to the west, but the eastern fringe of its precipitation just off our coast. A few showers, maybe a sprinkle this morning, more likely finding a couple of scattered showers or storms later this afternoon. Waking up with mostly cloudy skies across the region. You might see a few peaks of sunshine later this afternoon, about a 40 to 50% chance of those scattered showers and storms. If you get those thunderstorms, you'll likely have some locally heavy rainfall with high temperatures otherwise right there around 90 degrees. I'll tell you, it's a good time now to download the 10 News app. You can track the tropics and keep an eye on that radar whenever you want, right there at the palm of your hand. Hillary, how are those roads looking?
Well, 275 is now a hot spot in Hillsborough County because we have an accident, and then we also have a slowdown approaching the downtown interchange. So let's go first to this crash, which is just south of Fowler Avenue on 275 northbound, and we can see that from Sky 10. We're flying over this right now, so it's in the left shoulder, not blocking any main lanes, and really not causing a delay on the side that it's on. The delay we're seeing is, of course, southbound traffic. That's much heavier traffic for rush hour. Sometimes you'll see some onlooker delays from that as well. Right now, we've got some good news as you head out the door for work if you're in Pinellas County and you take Gandy Boulevard, because you can now skip more lights heading through St. Pete. Here's what I mean. Our photographer got video of this yesterday of the new westbound Gandy overpass. It's that big elevated lane that they've been working on for a couple of years, and it's a smooth ride from 4th Street all the way to 275. So this is time-lapse video of that ride. Eventually, there will be 6 lanes. The eastbound side isn't finished yet, but that will be done in just a few weeks. And the entire Gandy corridor project is expected to be done by later this year. Here's the deal, though. If you miss that 4th Street exit and you accidentally find yourself on the elevated lanes, you can't make a U-turn. I calculated it for about 2.5 miles going west. So deep breaths. It might take a little bit to get used to this. And I will say, I'm going to admit, I am the traffic reporter here, and I have been for quite some time, and I even made that mistake yesterday. So it's okay if it happens to you.
She calculated it because she drove it, and
It
not
was
only
so
did
frustrating.
she drive it, I did too. I said, what is happening? Where am I? Alrighty, let's move on. So here's something that's going to get your attention this morning. Tampa strip club owner and activist Joe Redner has taken on another fight, medical marijuana. So Jenny Dean is at a dispensary in Tampa, one of 7 in our state, and Redner has filed a lawsuit. And how would that actually change our current medical marijuana laws?
Well, Jackie, I'm going to give you the short answer. Basically, Redner wants to grow his own marijuana because he is suffering from stage 4 lung cancer. But if he successfully gets to do this, this could certainly change things for people that are suffering from medical conditions and can legally get pot. It could change a lot of things. So right now, Redner and others have to get their medicinal marijuana here at Trulieve in Tampa, but you can only get what state law allows, and that includes the pills, oils, edibles, and vape pens. But you cannot get the buds to smoke it, and you're not allowed to grow it on your own. Now, Redner's arguing that the state constitutional amendment, which was approved by 70% of the voters last year, includes all parts of the plant, and he wants to use it all. He told the Tampa Bay Times that he would use the entire plant by juicing it, and he knows exactly how it would be grown and what pesticides would be used on it because he'd be doing it himself. Now, Trulieve here, as you mentioned, is one of only 7 in the state of Florida. By the end of the year, there should be 10 more that are legally approved to grow and sell marijuana. But right now, no plan to let individuals grow it. Jackie?
Well, Jenny, who can actually get medical marijuana in Florida?
Good question. Right now, only terminally ill patients and children that have cancer or severe epilepsy. But sometime this summer, they're supposed to expand that to people that are suffering from other debilitating medical conditions like glaucoma, Parkinson's disease, even multiple sclerosis.
Thank you, Jenny. Well, let's talk about Georgia. It's a historic day for them as voters head to the polls for a special election. We're talking about the most expensive House race to date. Republican Karen Handel and Democrat Jon Ossoff are both vying for the 6th congressional district seat. The race is to fill Tom Price's seat, who took a Health and Human Secretary position in the Trump administration. And this district has gone to the Republican Party since 1979. And the race offers a potential preview of the 2018 midterm elections.
Whoever wins and loses, it's going to affect either party and how they react to President Trump moving forward.
More than 140,000 people already cast ballots in early voting. High turnout expected today at the polls, and this is a runoff race from an earlier race. And the president already tweeting out a bunch of tweets this morning encouraging you to go vote for Handel. Well, even if you don't live in that district, one thing that really stands out to everybody about this race is the amount of money being spent, Rob.
Yeah, you got that right, Jackie. This election, by far the most expensive race for a single seat in the history of the United States Congress. $59 million has been poured in to this one race alone. Democrat Jon Ossoff, 30 years old, has raised $23 million compared to $4.2 million by his Republican opponent. But the GOP spent $12 million on the race, and a GOP super PAC also added an additional $6 million. $59 million is actually double that of the previous most expensive race for a congressional seat. Florida's 18th district, which is the Fort Pierce, West Palm Beach area, had the second most expensive race back in 2012, and that one was just over $24 million.
Well, this woman that you see behind me, her name is Charlena Lyles. She was a 30-year-old woman expecting a baby right there, also a mother of 4. She was shot and killed by Seattle police on Sunday. But there's so much more to this story. So Seattle police say 2 officers were responding to a burglary report at her apartment. And that is when officers say Lyles confronted them holding a knife. So both officers shot her. She was later pronounced dead at the scene, and Lyles' children were inside the apartment during the entire thing.
There's no reason for her to be shot in front of her babies. My sister got mental health problems. Yes, she does, but there's no reason for her to be shot.
Officers say Lyles is known with the police departments because she had just been released from jail last week. Lyles' family is questioning why officers did not use a taser or other non-lethal options during that encounter. Tonight on CBS, we have NCIS at 8 for you, Bull at 9, at 10, NCIS New Orleans, then Nightside at 11.
As you head out the door this morning, here's what's making headlines. The airbag company Takata is expected to make a bankruptcy decision by the end of the month. The people suing them will get pennies on the dollar if this happens.
Tropical storm Brett dumped heavy rain over Trinidad this morning. You can see lots of wind and rain. The storm had sustained winds of 40 miles per hour with even higher gusts. Tropical storm Brett, just one of 2 systems that we're tracking this morning. A potential tropical cyclone, potentially becoming tropical storm Cindy in the Gulf of Mexico. We're tracking that later today.
And here's a local headline that you can find on our website this morning. Take a look at this video. These 2 are suspected of armed robbery at Memories Lounge in Sarasota. One suspect took cash and grabbed 2 bottles of alcohol before leaving the bar. For more information and for this full video, you can just head over to our website, thebtsp.com.
A Muslim teenager is brutally murdered after leaving a mosque with friends. So Virginia police say 17-year-old Nabra Hassanin was walking back to the mosque after she and a group of friends were breaking their fast for Ramadan. And officers say Darwin Torres drove up to those teens. They got into an argument, and then witnesses say Torres tried to run them over. But that is when things took a turn.
Torres was able to catch Nabra. His anger over that earlier encounter then led to violence when he hit Nabra with a baseball bat. Torres then took Nabra with him in his car to a second location nearby.
Horrifying. Her body was found in a pond, and police say they have no evidence that this killing was motivated by race or religion, but maybe it's more of a case of road rage. Well, we are living in one of the most polarizing times in recent political history, and we've heard this term used a lot in the past months, and again just recently from President Trump, fake news. But it turns out, Rob, that this term, fake news, wasn't created by President Trump.
No, it really wasn't, and that's an important point, but it's hard to believe that just a few months ago we didn't use that term at all. I tweeted something out last week, and someone just absolutely shut me down by responding fake news. That's all they wrote, and my tweet was about like a very basic news story. It was real news, but that got me thinking about the term and its history. Now, the phenomenon dates back to the invention of the printing press more than 500 years ago, but it really blew up after a press briefing in January. Take a look.
Go ahead. She's asking a question. Don't be rude.
President-elect, can you give us a question?
Don't be rude.
You're attacking us. Can you give us a question?
Don't be rude. No, I'm not going to give you a question. I'm not going to give you a question.
Can you state categorically?
You are fake news.
Sir,
go ahead.
Can you state categorically that nobody... No, Mr. President-elect, that's not appropriate.
The reason for fake news is pretty simple. The more clicks that something gets, the more money it makes online. But social media is the big difference between today and 500 years ago. Facebook, Twitter, and websites like WordPress give anyone, anywhere a publishing platform, where before you needed that printing press and a whole lot of money. Now anyone can produce content, whether it's the Washington Post or someone in their basement at home. And maybe you remember some of these headlines. Maybe they got you. Check them out. The Pope backs Trump. Hillary sold weapons to ISIS, or how about this one? FBI agents suspected in Hillary email leaks found dead. They all blew up on Facebook. They were all fake, totally bogus, but they each got millions of clicks. So will it ever stop? Well, regulation and freedom of press don't really go hand in hand, but companies like Facebook and Google have promised to start cracking down on fake news stories before the next election. I'd like to bring in Courtney here because she's got a little bit more on my big question today. How do we spot these stories online?
Good news, it's actually pretty simple. You got to ask yourself the question, how is the writing? Is the caps lock on and multiple exclamation points? That's not used in the newsroom, so any of your real news headlines, it's probably not going to be something that's legit. Who are the writers and the people in the story? You can Google them, you can find clues to see if they are legitimate or not, and simply put, if it's real, there's going to be other news sites that are going to be reporting on this too. There's also some really cool websites that I have used to fact check, which is Snopes.com and factcheck.org. So some really good information there.
Very interesting. And we were talking with Grant earlier. Apparently this happens not just in the news, but also in the weather all the time.
Yeah, and here's the thing, you get some of, we call them scarecasters, where, they'll go out, they'll kind of issue a worst case scenario, and I don't want to say a forecast because they're not educated. They don't have the skills or really the necessary tools to make accurate forecasts. They're putting out these forecasts that are completely accurate to scare you, to get clicks, shares, and all of that. So you really have to make sure that you know your meteorologist, you know your forecasts, and you know the source of where this information is coming from. And that's why we take this really seriously, especially during the tropical season here at 10 News, because as you know, tropical weather is a very real threat, and it could be something that we'll be dealing with here later this year. Fortunately, make sure that you're able to get our storm coverage. You can do that with our radio partners on the Dove 105.5, the Eagle 107.3, and Magic 94.9. And Hillary, I'm happy to report that there's no rain out there for you this morning.
Yes, that's helping things. However, we have had a pretty busy commute otherwise with some random accidents out there this morning.
Well, Hillary, are minority drivers more likely to be cited during traffic stops than whites? Stanford University took a closer look at the numbers for you, getting data from 100 million traffic stops in 31 states from 2011 to 2015. And here's what they found. When pulled over for speeding, on average, black drivers were 20% more likely to get a ticket rather than white drivers. Hispanic drivers, 30% more likely, and both black and Hispanic drivers were twice as likely to be searched during a traffic stop than whites. And that study does look into other factors like drivers who carry contraband and discrimination. Well, you don't often hear about inmates and correctional officers getting along, but 6 Georgia inmates are being praised after saving an officer's life. So they were on a work detail when the officer just passed out. He was unconscious, having a hard time breathing. So they took his vest off to cool him down and then used his phone to call 911.
They really stepped up in a time of crisis and showed that they care about my officers.
Anything could have been done. Anything could have happened, but all the right things happened.
That officer is going to be okay, will be taken off of work detail because of the high temperatures. But man, they came together.
Yeah, you trust that crew next time out,
Yeah, and I think it's so interesting, we were talking about it at 5 o'clock, that this was a week after those 2 inmates in Georgia shot and killed a correction officer, 2 correction officers.
Yeah.
So I think it's very interesting how we have a different story still coming from Georgia.
Yeah, another story you might find interesting, okay? Stress might be weighing you down more than you know. Good morning to you, 6:54, and listen to this story of diversity winning. So the more diverse a middle school, the greater the well-being of all of the students. This is according to a new UCLA study. Researchers say when multiple ethnic groups are about the same size in a school, no group is likely to exert influence over another. So I know you get stressed. I know I do. Just take a deep breath right now with me. Right? It's not good for you. Okay, Grant. Too deep. Too deep. Okay. Well, it's not good for you, the stress. It affects your mood, your food choices, which can obviously lead to weight gain. A new study shows a direct connection between the stress hormone cortisol and your weight.
People who had higher BMIs had higher levels of cortisol, and people who had higher waist circumference, kind of carrying their weight in the middle, also had that higher levels of cortisol.
This link between stress and weight gain is so real, but here's what you can do. Meditate, relax, exercise, and a healthy diet. All great advice, not easy to do.
Not at all, because when you're stressed, sometimes all you want to do is eat.
Eat
Just ice cream like I did last night.
Yeah.
Is that, what flavor?
Guilty. I It doesn't matter.
Doesn't
No,
matter?
I think it was butter pecan.
Butter
perhaps?
pecan,
Yeah.
nice. Okay, so how about a little bit of retail therapy for that stress? One of the biggest shopping days is Amazon Prime Day, so they haven't announced the official date just yet, but we have a pretty good guess. Mid-July is when the last 2 Prime Days happen, making July 11th and 12th the likeliest of days.
And real quick before we let you go, we are tracking the chance for some rain. Nothing out there right now, but some cloud cover for sure. And then we're looking at a better chance for a few scattered storms later this afternoon.
And with that system coming from the west or going west, there are some airport delays at TIA this morning. I'm checking right now. Looks like Charlotte, Dallas, that's delayed and then canceled. New York and Washington, D.C. So definitely check that before you head out the door. Even if you're going somewhere that might not have weather, your route might
It's kind of
be
all
affected
connected, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, it's all connected. Your flight may be coming from a different place. You never know where that plane originates from, so yeah, check.
That is a good app to know. Well, thanks so much for joining us today and starting your day. On the bright side, we'll see you bright and early tomorrow.